Ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls, and likely just Mikey D right now. Welcome to Driving the Conversation with me, Daniel, and Driving and Dragons. It is 6 o'clock, and I'm going to get crack-a-lacking here in just a couple of seconds. Leave a little bit of time for some folks to file in, and if you are there, hit the like button, share the stream. Let's get some folks in here. Let's get talking because we are going to talk Corpse Kings and we are going to talk Magic in the 3612 system. Some of the ideas I've got both for what would be called priestly or divine magic and for arcane magic, which I've always disliked the Vancian magic system that D&D uses. I don't like it. I find it very clunky. It's fantastic if you are looking at it from the perspective of if you're looking at it from the perspective of a story writer of a narrative situation, then yeah, it's fine. It actually works quite well narratively. And like for instance, if you read like the early Dragonlance novels, and you find situations where like Raistlin, when he's a lower level red robed wizard, he is very tired and worn out after casting some very simple spells, and he can only do stuff once or twice a day. And they even talk about how the great towers of high sorcery, where all the most powerful archmages are defeated by the common rabble, like people just take them over. Weiss and Hickman even go into it, and they say that even the most powerful mages have to sleep and recover their energy and memorize their spells, and that all takes time. And when there's enough people, they can just run them out of these towers, because even the most powerful mages will run out of spells and can't do it all the time every time. So great narratively, but as a game mechanic, it becomes really, really clunky. Because it just so happens that every time you read any kind of story that happens to have Vancian magic, leaves Dragonlance again, it just so happens that the mage always prepared the spell that he needed for the story. He always has Fireball ready, or he always has the sleep spell ready, or he always has light, and he always has read magic, and he always has the spell that picks locks. It just so happens that with his 2 spells a day, he always picks the right ones for the story. And then when you get into gaming, it seems like my wizard always has like 4 magic missiles prepared so that he can be worth a crap in combat at level 2. And when magic would be useful elsewhere, he never has it prepared. And it becomes a bit of a nuisance. Or it gets to the point where on another side, let's say that you got somebody who does pay a little bit more attention, prepares a little bit better, is a little more selective with their spells. If the DM has something in there that's like some kind of puzzle or some kind of monkey wrench in the works, you throw a spanner in the works, and it's like, oh well, I could if I had such and such spell prepared, we could deal with this. And it always feels like you deliberately figured out this is the stuff my spellcaster prepares, and I planned around it. My Dr. Evil was like, ooh, we cheated the player by, making sure that we use stuff that they didn't prepare spells for. By the way, old standby, just a little Wild Turkey 101 old fashioned with a couple of cherries thrown in. So Vancian magic to me is largely unsatisfying in a game system, even though it works pretty well narratively. I've always wanted one that kind of invokes that pulp feel, where, because you think about pulp magic, you think about Conan. Magic is never all the wizard has these spells ready and they go. It's always something where there was like a ritual involved, or there's tons of study to figure out how to do these things. And yeah, the super powerful wizard, he may fling a fireball or shoot a bolt of lightning, or unlock a door, or make some guy be frozen in place. But anything big, I mean, it's a ritual. It's almost a religious situation. And then the same thing when it comes to like divine casters. I'm a super pious cleric. I'm a great paladin, and I am out here carrying out the will of my God. And I'm in a tight situation, and my God will not answer my prayer for this situation because it's not the prayer that I prepared at the beginning of the day. Or he's answered enough prayers today, and I don't get any more prayers until later. Like, this is just, I mean, like I said, it's just stupid and clunky. You have to have ways to restrict it. You have to have ways to limit it so that you don't just have spellcaster who does whatever the hell they want, whenever the hell they want. But I think Vancian has always been bad. So I'm like, how do we get the pulp feel, and how do we get a magic system that feels better and isn't so clunky? So we're going to get into that here in a bit, because it is very, very alpha state just being formed. In fact, the magic system itself isn't really fully formed yet. I just have a couple of what we call callings that are related to my Dreamless Dark setting and magic for them. So I've got the flavor in there. I've developed some of the why, and I'm starting to build the system around it. Which actually, that's a pretty little segue there. As once again, as we're kind of waiting for things to spool up here, first 10 minutes or so, letting some folks trickle in. One thing that we have is I've done the first video, the introduction video. It goes live for people who are not members. It's been, members have had it since Monday, but non-members can access it. It'll go live tomorrow at 5. Is my 7 keys to effective game design. It's kind of loosely based on the 7 habits of highly effective people. And one of them happens to be that you think in settings, not in systems. You know, systems, settings first, systems second. This is an example of that. I said I started not from how do I make a magic system and then how do I fit it into my game. I started from what do I want my magic system to feel like? How do I want my magic system to function at the gaming table? What do I want players to experience through it? And how do I make it fit this world I've created? And now I'm starting to build out the system of how it works around it to tinker with how do I make sure it doesn't break the game? How do I make sure that it doesn't turn into something that's useless or turn into something that's infinitely exploitable while still making it fun? So be on the lookout for that tomorrow, guys. I can't really say that enough, that I think that series is going to be pretty fantastic, especially if you have a love of this kind of what's the word for it? Not theory crafting, but like if you like to understand how the sausage is made, if you like to look in and say, man, it sure is cool that we have that this is how the game is put together. This is the work that goes into making one that's not just slop. Then it is, I think it'll be a cool series for you that'll help you kind of understand why some games are cool ideas but just really bad, and why some other games just seem to work really well, even though they seem to be kind of bare bones. And a lot of it is a philosophy of how they approach it. For one thing, while we're here, let's talk about some real important stuff. And that important stuff would be right here, at least if my screen share will hurry up and come up and do what I tell it to. Well, don't tell me there's an issue with this. You've shown it before. Try again in a little while. See that, guys? Pay StreamYard all this money, and it doesn't want to let me shill my stuff. But big thing here is, guys, the Corby Codex, Volume 1. If you do not have your copy yet, here is the no text version of the cover from Patio Cakes. Fantastic original artwork. This is actually not even the full cover. This is a part of the work in progress. So you can see as he was starting to make the idea for this cover. For whatever reason, our wonderful folks over here at StreamYard do not want to let me actually upload the cover. But hopefully that will upload. Here we go. The finished version of the cover. I wonder if it'll let me add both to the stage. No, it won't. So you can see here, work in progress. You can see here where he's come in and he's finished out some of these details. But Corvid Codex Volume 1, it's available over on Lulu right now. It is there in paperback and an ebook. Get yourself a copy. Leave a review if you already have a copy and you've had a chance to read through it. Tell me what your favorite story is. And be on the lookout. I just did the first set of revisions so that it can get global distribution and go to places like Amazon and all that stuff. And corrected a couple of minor grammatical and spelling errors that I missed in the original edit. But yeah, so it's there and it will be featured at, I'll have to ask Urban Verse, the name of this, the name of this convention. It kills me. But there is a, like a North Kentucky paranormal convention going on, like a ghost hunter and paranormal society and investigation convention. And we will have a table there with physical copies for sale. So if you're in the, I believe it's in Lexington. So if you're in that area, keep an eye out and go check out the convention and see about all the cool haunted houses and haunted stuff around Kentucky, and maybe buy yourself a copy there. The Red Caps, thanks for coming in. We got, of course, let's go ahead and do some of our saying hellos to folks in the chat. We do, of course, have good old-fashioned Mikey D here early, telling everybody that we need more driving, we need more dragons, and that apparently I have the Brick House TTRPG system because she's 36, 24, 36. Yeah, if she's 5'3", got some baby got back in there. But no, yeah, 36, 12, 36, 12. And if she's 12, then we need to have a conversation with my wood chipper. We have the Poor Orc Child. Always a welcome face in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. And of course, the Red Caps, one of my friends who keeps intelligence as a dump stat well stocked, either because he says stuff himself that lands him there or because he provokes other people into saying incredibly stupid things that end up there as well. He is I may as well make him an honorary contributor to the channel. So, on the ticket, let's get rocking. I'm going to get the unpleasant stuff out of the way first, guys. That's right. We got some unpleasant stuff. And unfortunately, StreamYard is struggling to upload, so I'm not going to be able to put stuff up on the screen for you on this. But I do. It's always hard to give an honest review when somebody that you actually like and have some respect for lets you down and puts out a product that you just cannot give a great review for and still be honest with yourself and be honest with your audience. And that's kind of the position that I land in with the copy that I got of the Corpse Kings RPG from Corpse King. I have really lauded his use of AI before in the past. Because when you look on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, he has put out some really fantastic stuff with AI. And usually a lot of stuff, what he does is he throws something at says like, what would you call this monster? And it's an obvious AI piece that's got a lot of problems, but it's a, hey, here's an idea. Think about it, right? Throws it out there. Struggling to upload. Mike, it doesn't want to bring the file up, and I don't want to like show the entire universe, my entire my entire background, and distract everybody with the desktop. Though I guess I could possibly do that. Try and pull it up here. No, we don't need that. That is, I wonder, but we'll look at that here in a second. Because I do want to put some stuff from that file up here. But anyway, he'll put it out there and he'll say, what would you call this monster? And he'll get some ideas and stuff, and he'll work some things in. He's doing, if there's one part of his game that he's doing perfect, it is engaging with the audience. It is listening to people. It is getting people involved. This isn't something that actually, I'm going to take that back. It is something you have to do. This is where your big companies, like, and big relative to the industry, where your Wizards of the Coast, where your Paizos, even where like your Chaosiums and your Steve Jackson Games and stuff, this is where they fail. Okay? This is where they fail. They fail because they stop engaging with their customers. They stop listening to them. They stop being an active participant in, I know that this is a charged term, but they stop being an active participant in the community. And because they stop being an active participant, they start losing a lot of goodwill. They start making what we would call tone deaf decisions. Why are they tone deaf? They're tone deaf because they're not listening to the tone anymore. They're not listening to what people are saying. They're not listening to what's going on. And that becomes an issue. It becomes a serious issue. And that's something that is absolutely critical as an indie game. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you go back to Dungeons and Dragons. It wasn't just Gary Gygax made this great game that revolutionized the industry, or revolutionized everything and created a whole new area or a whole new vertical in the industry and all that stuff. It's not just that he did that. Gygax was part of the community. He was out there at the wargaming conventions. He was involving himself with the people, and he was bringing them in to play the game. He was demoing it. He was listening to feedback and making changes. And that's what built Dungeons and Dragons into Dungeons and Dragons. It's the same thing that made Pathfinder a thing in the first place. All Paizo did was listen to what D&D's customers said and then do it, instead of doing what WotC decided they were going to do regardless of what customers said. WotC was so obsessed with trying to make they were so obsessed with trying to make this MMO on tabletop to capture this new demographic that they ignored the people who were there. And Paizo said, hey, people like this 3.5 thing. They want these adjustments and these corrections. We'll just make those and call it Pathfinder. And next thing you know, Pathfinder's competing against D&D directly. And then they turn around and start doing the really stupid stuff. And now nobody cares about PF2. So Corpse King does that really well. That's part of the reason why people know him. It's part of the reason why he gets a ton of engagement. And it's part of what keeps him viable. And he has shared some fantastic AI art. I'm talking the kind of things that takes a lot of correcting prompts, a lot of work, and a lot of adjustments to get them to look like real work. But that's the problem. And that's why that this big lead in comes into a pretty much a negative view. So before I start trashing on Corpse King, unfortunately, let's address a couple of these comments here. Looked at a copy of Corpse King in the back channels, and I can't bring ourselves to actually review it because we like the guy but hate how he put it together. It's kind of exactly where I am, but I'm going to try and be honest here, and I'm going to try and put this out here. And I want to show everybody that, yes, it doesn't matter if I like you or dislike you. I'm going to tell the truth. I've been honest about the Basic Expert, who I don't think I can be on a stream with because the two of us just can't seem to get along. And I have personal issues there, but I'm still fair about his products and what he puts out. I was fair about Condor DM's game and actually gave it probably more praise than anybody not named Condor DM. Steven Saunders is the only person who praised the OTTRPG system more than I did. Every other review was nothing but negative. I at least gave it some positives and gave it some some uplifting. I found the good in it. It's because I want to be honest about this, and I want people to be able to trust what I say when I give an opinion or when I make an analysis of something, that I can put that bias aside even if I have it. But yeah, this one right here is tough for me too. Let's see here. Garibay says Gary made yes. Garibay says a lot of stupid shit. D&D is not a human improvement system. It's not some grand philosophy. It's a game, and Garibay is a seriously compromised individual mentally. I said this before. I said this on in an episode of Intelligence is a Dump Stat, I believe. I have a theory about Garibay. I think some great tragedy or something happened in his life, and somehow he hooked on to D&D, and D&D is what got him through it. So now he attributes D&D to some kind of greatness that it doesn't actually warrant, that doesn't exist. There's a lady in my neighborhood. She had terrible personal tragedy. Her husband and her son both passed away very close to each other, and I believe one of them was an accidental overdose and the other was a suicide because of the accidental overdose. She found both bodies. Devastating. And there was a gentleman in town who was really, him and his wife were really there for her and helped her through it. So that man is a saint in her eyes. And she will go off on anybody who even says the tiniest little thing about him, except for the fact that there's tons of evidence that he was really corrupt as a politician, that he embezzled from the church, that he's just generally dishonest and self-serving. But because of what he did for her, he's second to Jesus Christ. And I think that might be what happened with Garibay, because of that association that he has with D&D, or maybe it's Critical Role, because I mean, we know the Ryan Akaba obsession he has. Something has gone crazy in his brain and made D&D something it's not. That wouldn't be a terrible idea. Would not. So, showing why your product is cool and adjusting to feedback rather than demanding attention due to your name, identity, or cause. Yes, that is exactly what it is from the Red Caps there. That is kind of the serious thing that Corpse King does well. But here's where the problem is. So he has some of these great pieces of AI art. He really does. And they do appear in his product. They're there. Now, just like anything with AI, if you really dig into it, you're going to find problems. But then again, if you give me a piece of really fantastic art and you really dig into it, you're going to find problems. And here, we'll pick on Patty. No, let's not go to the work in progress. For all the fantastic, awesome stuff that's happening in this picture, if I dig deep into it, I can find, we can start finding some issues. Like, for instance, some perspective on the orc's hand where he's holding the shotgun. And, even though there's awesome fine detail in here, like having two triggers, it seems like that finger's pointing quite a bit higher than it really should. Maybe there's some shadow stuff in there. There's some inconsistencies with what he did with the car. Like, why do we have this bent license plate that's not sitting flush and flat in the license plate bracket, but is kind of sticking out here in the front to give this angle? Little things like that. And, why does our dwarf boss lord up here have 9,000 teeth? Now, I know that more teeth means more evil, and that's kind of a general thing, and there's almost some tongue in cheek to it, but we could also come in and say that I've got a dwarf shark up here. So this is a fantastic piece of work, and I couldn't be happier with it. And anybody who says that this is not good work is an idiot. However, you can still, if you really want to zoom in and dig in, you can find little tiny flaws, because humans are not perfect. You do the same thing with his AI work. You can find a few artifacts. The problem with it is that he put in like 3 or 4 of those 4 or 5, really good AI art pieces. And he put in a whole bunch that he did not put that work into. Like, there is a tremendous amount of AI Sanskrit in some of it, including like what should be like his copyright page. AI Sanskrit all over it, basically gibberish, hieroglyphic writing that was hallucinated by the AI that's in there. Same thing with a lot of the background pictures that he's got, where you would have like the cool thing from a rule book where you're talking about a class and it kind of has like the stat sheet behind them in sepia tone or something. You're reading the real thing here, and over here it's got like the, you know, the technical layout or like an anatomy drawing of a dragon where it's talking about his shoulder and how the wings work and that sort of thing is like a piece of flavor art. AI Sanskrit all over the place. Lots of issues with the AI art. And it's like, you put in all this effort to give us these pieces of AI art that make us say, man, this guy's using AI right. This is what we want to see. This is how you use AI. And he's being honest about it, which is extremely important. And then you get his book and you've already seen the good AI art because he gave it to you in the ads. And then a lot of the AI art that made it into the book is we have AI art at home. It's Temu version. I mean, it's not utter complete garbage like first prompt stuff, but there's a lot of serious problems. The layout is bad. Layout is awful. It really is. I honestly, I just cannot justify it. I cannot defend it. I tried, I looked through it. I tried to find good things to say about the layout's just terrible. A lot of it is because he kind of did it backwards. And instead of having art that's designed to go in and complement the text and the layout, he basically tried to force his, he tried to force the layout over the art pieces. And to be honest, one of the best things he could do is delete about 60% of the art in the book. If he deleted about 60% of the worst AI art pieces out of the book and then focused on the layout, it would be half the size and 10 times the quality. Much easier to read. Because you have situations like where, like, if I pull up this, if I got this Cyberpunk Red book right here from Martel Sorian, and I go over here, and let's just say I pull up these character classes. Notice how they're all the same. Top corner outside is where you have your name. It wraps around. You have your flavor text at the top. You have your breakdown, and then you have your quick description of your roll ability, and you have your picture of whatever that person is beside it, right? Fantastic layout. Uh-oh. A little bit of a hiccup there. But the issue you have with Corpse Kings is he's like, all right, I'm going to have like a picture of a knight. And it's a nice vertical image, just like one of those, just a knight standing there. Okay. And he puts that in there and then he wraps the text around it. And the next one, it's like, okay, here's the paladin. Well, the paladin is this long landscape image that would stretch across the bottom or something. He's got through the middle of the thing, and now he's trying to wrap the text around that. And then the rogue is in this big, broad position that's like kind of star-shaped because of the way his arms and legs are. And you got the text trying to go around the picture. And it makes it where there's no consistency in reading through the different parts of the game. So it's like, if I had this on a coffee, let's just assume that all the AI art got really fixed. Like he went in and he corrected like the extra fingers and the Sanskrit, and he really polished it off the way he has, like the way we know he can. The layout would make this where it's like a cool coffee table book that you pick up and you flip through and maybe you look at, but as a rule book, it's an utter failure because you just can't follow it, because you're constantly having to adjust to where is the information I'm looking for. And as a reference book, that would be even worse, because your brain can't make connections that say this layout is associated with where the character templates are. And I can flip through and very quickly find med tech in my book or cleric or paladin or whatever. And I know where it starts and I know where I can find the correct information, because every character is this paragraph, this paragraph, this paragraph, picture, chart, table. They're all different. And it's because he's trying to force the game around the art. And then what's you can tell that he suffered from that. Like, he also did not pay for any professional editing. There's a lot of AI issues, like AI editing artifacts in there, where you can tell that he tried to use AI to edit the book instead of hiring an editor or just getting somebody to help him. And the AI didn't just make suggestions and give him point out errors. It made changes on its own, and you can catch them. And it makes it look like the game doesn't follow, where you have a lot of contradictions in the rules that makes it very difficult to actually see that there is a very bare bones rules light story game in there. And that's what it is. It's a rules light storytelling game, like in the vein of like a Powered by the Apocalypse or something. The pieces are there, but you can tell there's places where trying to use AI to edit put in changes that it thought made sense that don't, and screw that up. And you can also see that there appears to be a lot of lack of play testing, because there's just some conflicting information in a lot of mechanics. Let's see here what we got here from Mikey D. Yeah, one of the biggest problems, layout, that and the flow of the rules. Is there a game in there? It's not super apparent unless you really dig. You really can't say it better than that. That there's a game in there, but it's buried. So while I like Corpse King as a person, I like how he interacts with the community. I like him as a personality in the TTRPG space, and I think he's a good guy. And I do really appreciate him providing me with a free copy of this. That's another thing to keep in here. I'm saying this about something I got for free. All right. I didn't even pay for it. And I'm still saying this about it because it's the truth. What's in there, he's got, I want to say it's like, what is it, like 300 pages, I think is what this book is. I can look it up real quick. It's I've got this large book, this large game book. He could probably fit the entirety of his game in, let's see here. Yes, 309 pages. He could probably cut this book down to 100 pages, and only maybe he could cut it down to 100 pages and only maybe 25 of them really focused around actual game rules, and it would be perfect. He could scale back a ton of the extraneous art, focus on making the art that's in there better, like we know he can, clean up the rules, hire an editor. If you really can't get it, hire an editor. Go get Eclectic Goat and tell her, pay her to go through the book and make sure it's laid out well. So at least then you don't have people saying like, oh, there's no game here and there's all these problems, and it says this on page 1 and it says this on page 77 and it mentions this on page 3 but never mentions it ever again. And then you find out it does mention it again, but it mentions it, point the finger at me. My setting for my 3612 game and working is the Dreamless Dark. In the past, it was the Dreaming Dark. So in my text document where I'm working on my game, there are still places where it says Dreaming Dark instead of Dreamless Dark. That's because that was a work in progress title. And to be honest, so is Dreamless Dark. It's a work in progress title. And since my brain knows what it's supposed to be, it auto corrects it and I miss it when I go back in to fix it. And you've got a lot of that problem in this book. And I will say this, it is a master class in the issue of trying to do everything yourself. That's the biggest takeaway from Corpse Kings. It is a master class in why no man can be an island when it comes to this kind of thing. You can't catch it. Karate studios are covered in mirrors because you cannot watch yourself to catch flaws in your technique. That's the same thing here. You cannot catch a lot of these things, and it is rife with them. Now, I would absolutely not buy the physical copies. I wouldn't. I'm sorry, Corpse King. No, do not buy the physical copy. It's too expensive for what you get. Even if he'd polished all this stuff up, I'd still say don't buy the physical copies. It's too expensive for what you get. Cut it in half so that that production cost comes down significantly, jack up the quality. Now you've got something that looks nice on your shelf. Now it's kind of worth the money. At this point, you're paying for a whole lot of low quality stuff that's dumped in with the good stuff, trying to mix in the good to cover up the not so great. And the game needs a pretty fair amount of work. If you can catch the PDF on sale, I think there's merit in it. It's worth having a look, as long as you're not shelling out high dollar for it. Like, I mean, this is not a $15 PDF game. It's just not, because the quality's not there. It could be, and I think that there's a lot of potential, but it's just not where it needs to be. Send my early AI Conan game so we can see if it's not only playable, but if people have an issue with AI generation, the less the AI, the more the prompter. It'd be worth looking at. We can have some fun with it. See if it, old Mikey D, we'll take a look at your AI generated Conan game. Now, for those out there, and I've had these discussions, Corpse King's game is playable. It's playable, and it serves its purpose. And as a story game, it's what it needs to be. It is not a crunchy game. It is not a fine-tuned, balanced system where you're building characters and that sort of thing. It's a story game. It's just designed to give you a way to collaboratively tell a story and enjoy this world that he's built, which is a pretty unique world. I do like the idea of the Corpse King world. It's not entirely unique, but nothing is. But it's actually probably the best part of the entire project, is the kind of lore that he's tried to put into it. And so the seeds are there, and if you can dig through it, you can play it and have a good time. But just understand, you're not going to be able to just flip this book open and work. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, like, I just held up this Cyberpunk Red book here, right here. It's got a lot of the same problems. This is a monster. This is a monster. 400 pages, 400 and some odd pages. Yeah. It's over 400 pages. Matter of fact, I think it's like a 430 or 460 or something. It's 450 pages, this book, and they could have put this game in 200. All right. And with this one, it's not because of art. And there's a reason why I've got little tabs all through this book. And that's because this game, Cyberpunk Red, it was designed as a PDF before it was designed as a book. And then they didn't redesign it as a book. You pull up the PDF, everything's hyperlinked. It's click, 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 go right through your character progression. You can do it in 5 minutes. You understand everything. Go right to everything you need if you're on the PDF doing the hyperlinks. If you're in the book, the thing is a nightmare to reference. You're flipping pages all over the place. There's weapon charts, and there's weapon charts in the combat section on page 125, and then there's the more detailed weapon section that's all the way in the back in 300. And it's like, there's a lot of unnecessary text and a lot of unnecessary pages in that book. Corpse Kings has the same problem, just in much, much more glaring, because they didn't have he's one man versus Artel Saurian games. So that's enough bad, and that's enough dunking on our friends here. Because he gave him the book for free, so I certainly can't complain. It was generous of him to do so, and I really wish that I could get in here and talk about how great it is. I will say this: I also still have a review to do of Ghosts of Vietnam from Gorgon's Grimoire. I will say this: that one will not be as bad a review. I just have to get around to it. I need to apologize to him a little bit, and it's because I am not a second edition D&D guy, and that is the core basis of his game. It's based around Dungeons and Dragons second edition. However, I think he's done some really cool stuff with Ghosts of Vietnam, and that book in Ghosts of Vietnam, you can see where a larger book with more text and stuff is actually used in an efficient way that adds flavor. And it's very easy for you to go into the book and say, here's the game here up front in this 120 pages is my game that I can play the game with. And here's all the extra stuff that I can tack onto it to make it my own, to add more flavor, to make it feel more like Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. And the changes that are made to the second edition system make it feel more like Vietnam. The biggest reason I haven't done the review of it yet is I am having to do a lot of mental homework on it because second edition is not it ain't my bag, baby. And I can't read through it and visualize the game as easily as I can with, say, the interlock system with Cyberpunk, or the D100 system with Call of Cthulhu, or a D20 system game, particularly based around 3.5. So I have to, that's a me problem. If you're a second edition guy, though, I'm going to tell you right now, that's worth the buy. That is 100% worth the buy. Ghosts of Vietnam. I've been meaning to get in and to play the game with them, because it actually got me a little excited when I started looking at some of the stuff that's in it. But I do owe him that. I do owe him that review at some point in time. All right, so that, I believe, is enough jawing about somebody else's stuff. Why don't we get to talking about some of my stuff, maybe? See what I got going on. Let's see here. We will pull up my document here. So I wonder if I can. That might be a little difficult. So basically, the 3612 system, like I said, I wanted to figure out a way to make a more pulp feel to the Magic system. I wanted it to be a more gritty, ritualistic Magic system that feels more like you're having to use the ancient ways and the old knowledge to tap into the long forgotten past, the dreamless dark, so to speak. And I want it to feel like you're Thoth Amon or somebody from the Conan stories that, spent years finding the knowledge to conjure up this magic. If you're doing the arcane thing, if you're a priest, I want you to be somebody who is, trying to be a shining light in the darkness, and I want it to be more faith-based. So let's take a look here, and I'm going to be a little bit of a screen reader here. So if you guys will forgive me as I read through my own book, what I've got in here is the priest. And it says, the priest is a holy man dedicated to one of the many faiths, from high clerics to hierophants in the civilized worlds to tribal shamans, isolated druids of the savage lands. Their religious leaders dedicated their lives to serving a higher power, and that higher power in return favors them with gifts of knowledge and worldly might. So right off the bat, one of the things I wanted to do, even though I'm calling this class a priest, is I want to make it super, super clear that as a priest, it is not as a priest, you're not, pigeonholed into a particular type of religious behavior. I need to, in a way, kind of break that stigma of you're part of the church. I don't want you going in thinking like, well, I'm a cleric, so I'm going to be like, pagan person, or I'm a cleric, so I'm going to be like, Father Johnson or whatever. I want you to think in terms of priest means religious figurehead. It means religious leader. And this also makes it to where I don't need to, I want players and game masters to understand that, and this is something that's great for D&D, by the way. I think this is one of the things that's kind of ruined 5th edition. is in 3.5, you had core classes, and then you could add prestige classes, which were more refined versions of various different paths you could take in the core classes, right? In fifth edition, you have all these subclass nonsense, and then it's like, well, I want to have a shaman class. It's a little different than a priest or different than a cleric. And well, I want to have a priest, and I want to have a cleric, and I want to have a pastor, and I want to have a soothsayer, and I want to have all these things. Is like they're all basically minor variations of the same thing. They're religious figures, right? They don't need to be separate classes. They don't need, simplify this. And instead of making entirely new classes to have your, let's just say your shaman, tell your players how they can take the cleric and make him a shaman. It's like if you're a shaman of some Velt tribe, here's the kind of magic that you would normally have. Here's the kind of domains that you would focus on. Here's the kind of rituals that you would perform as prayer, and flavor it that way, as opposed to making an entire new class and having to try and come up with some tchotchke gimmick ability to make it different. So basically the priest, I tried to make his magic more a function of his faith and less a function of you get this many spells and they do this. I am going to read this out real quick just for fun. I have a sidebar that I've already written for this called Alternative Faiths. It says the faiths practiced by the major peoples of El, which is the world for the Dreamless Dark, are covered in a later chapter. However, a priest may choose to practice a different faith that is approved by the game master. Game masters should carefully consider the tenets of these faiths to ensure that they not only fit with the overall theme of the game they're running, but that they're not designed to merely allow a priest to circumvent restrictions on their special abilities. For example, a player wanting to practice a sect dedicated to chaos and selfishness could be allowed, but not as an excuse for a player to chaotically change their principles in order to achieve self-serving ends, and thus never be in violation of their faith no matter what they do. In this scenario, the game master should assist in writing out more detailed practices of the new faith and how they seek to spread chaos or or to take things for themselves in order to provide guidelines for behavior for the priest's character. Religious faith is also inherently orderly, even when it appears to be dedicated to individualistic or random ends. So regardless of the faith, for there to be a priest, there must be rules. I think I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's relatively important, that it's like, hey, here's your thing. You can have these different religions and stuff in there. You can work on them with your players, but don't let them come up with BS nonsense where they turn around and, make a religion dedicated to whatever the hell I want to in the moment that I want to. Like the guy who says, well, I'm not paying any taxes anymore because I declared myself a church. It's the GM's job to be the IRS and come in and say, yeah, that's nice, but you're still paying taxes. Little piece there from Mr. The Red Caps. Agree on too many classes. They're just other classes and costumes. I found myself pulled more to classes lately and defined by skill sets and gears to avoid a lot of that. Yeah, I'm a big skill-based game guy myself, predominantly because, looking at levels and looking at classes, I'd rather just say, here's all the different crap you can do, practice it and get good at it and build your character that way. That way you have to build character in building a character. The chaotic priest should be orderly to following the chaotic goals of the god and not the chaotic goals of the priest. That is not a bad way to put it. So let's take a look at this priest here. Here, we'll try to do this. We'll see how bad this looks. Let's do a screen share. That'll work. Man, look at all the tabs you can see up there at the top. Am I not terrible? Diablo 2 Sorceress, Rune Lists, Incarnate Map Maker. That needs to go away. That's personal finance information. Google Drive. Then, of course, here you go. Here's an untitled document. That's a rule book. Here's a rule book for this game. And here's the, you can even see right there, the Dreaming Dark as opposed to the Dreamless Dark. Still got the old name on it in the Google Doc. Anyway, so let's take a look here. We got our, let's see here. Can you go away? Yes, you can. That's awesome there. So we're here with our divine blessing. Once per day, the priest can pray for 1 hour uninterrupted in order to gain the ability to perform ritual casting. Spells cast using ritual casting, which is a skill, by the way, or is a ability, by the way, must be used in accordance with the tenets of the priest's chosen faith. Any spell cast for a purpose that the GM rules is not in their chosen faith results in the priest losing the ability until they can spend at least an entire week in isolation, focused on atonement for their transgressions, and they must donate any material, wealth, or possessions gained in the 3 days prior to and after the spell cast. So you go do some crazy crap to get some money. You're going to give up everything you got from it, plus anything you got right before it, right? And you're going to have to spend an entire week in game basically atoning for the fact that you abused your power. You can tell me if you think that's a little harsh or not. To me, I think that's what needs to be in there. I think things like I don't think you should automatically lose. Like a lot of times D&D was really harsh about that. It's like, oh, you stepped out of line, Paladin. You have no powers until you go on like a mystical quest to get them back. I get that if you're like blatantly and aggressively abusing your powers. But what that leads into a philosophy where the game master is afraid to use in the D&D example, the alignment rules to punish the player for misbehaving, or punish the player's character anyway, for misbehaving and acting out of alignment because the penalty's so harsh. There's an all or nothing. Here you got a harsh penalty, but it's not permanent. You got a material penalty, so anything they gained is probably going to go away. And it's a little bit more relaxed than the Paladin situation. I have an amateur level of tabs. Get those numbers up and really use that expensive memory. I hate to tell you this, to say I'm sharing this particular tab. I have 4 other Chrome windows up that each have at least this number of tabs. I have to separate things, man. I got like my writing and my Diablo 2 and my my game design and stuff in this one. I have another one that has all my driving and dragon stuff and my 14 different Adobe windows up for where I make my thumbnails and stuff. And then I got my other one that's for Corvid Codex only. But there you go. Video on demand later. All right, Red Caps, hope you win a bunch of money. And when you win a bunch of money at poker, super chat. All right, so let's get back into this. So right there, right off the bat, we established they have the ability to do the casting. They have the ability to atone. You can actually see down here that I have scripted out something that they do for atonement. Chosen faith, he can serve, but a man can serve but one master. And for the priest, it's his faith. Regardless of the name given to the rituals performed, strict moral and ethical precepts and goals are ascribed to every faith, and a priest has to adhere to them. They violate their faith intentionally or negligently lose all their special abilities until they atone for their transgressions. When dealing with the members of their chosen faith, the difficulty rating for skill checks related to social interactions are reduced by 10. So they automatically get some benefits when they're operating with people who are in their faith, as long as they're in good standing. When they make opposed rolls, they're given a +5 bonus. As a leader in their faith, people who share their religious views are going to give them some benefit. And then, of course, like I said, if they directly violate their tenets, you see 2 different levels of penalty here. You have the I'm doing something that's a little outside of the lines using my powers. I'm going to have to do this. And then you have this, I directly violate things and I'm going to have to come down here and make atonement. We have a breakdown for that. And it talks about, what it should be. Priest whose faith is dedicated to truth and honesty unintentionally misleads another by offering unqualified advice. It should be something along the lines of prayer with a low difficulty rating ritual check, not a lengthy quest to rectify the wrongs that came as an unintentional result. However, like deliberately defrauding a wealthy patron for personal gain shouldn't be resolved with a heartfelt apology, but something much greater. Why? Because we're not here to say, we're not here for Joel Osteen to say, I'm sorry and get away with everything. So let's get in here to casting. Let's talk about magic because that's what we're finally getting into. Ritual casting. Priest in good standing with his faith, who receives a divine blessing. So we go up here to our divine blessing. We do our prayer in the morning. We get our ability to do ritual casting. He receives his divine blessing. He can cast one spell per round by making the requisite ritual check to cast that spell without having to perform the associated ritual listed for the spell. He can do this a number of times per day equal to his priest rank. Ritual magic is detailed later in the chapter, but a priest may only use this ability to cast spells with rituals learned or created via the theology skill and not spells with rituals learned or created via the arcane lore spell. So anyway, you've got a skill, theology, that you can use to craft spells. And then you have basically kind of a Lego system to generate your spells. You add this much to the difficulty rating to make it have an area of effect versus a single target. You add this much to make it have a permanent effect, or to make it have a instantaneous, or to make it last a certain number of rounds, and cost this much. And you build the spell based on the difficulty rating. If you can create it and you meet the criteria, you can create the spell. You can cast it two ways. It may take an hour-long ritual to cast that spell. To just cast it anytime you want to without it costing you anything. So let's just use a D&D example. I'm going to do knock, blow open the door. If I have time to sit here in front of this door and perform a 45-minute prayer ritual, I can make the lock fall off, and it doesn't cost me anything. However, if I'm a rank 5 priest, 5 times a day, I can walk up to that door, and as long as I can pass the ritual skill check to cast the spell, let's just say it's a 20, as long as I can roll a 20 on a ritual check, I can cast that spell instantaneously without having to do anything. Basically, I can walk up, I can look up in the sky and say, can you help me out with this, JC? And he blows the lock off the door. Okay. Otherwise, I have to do the full ritual where I pray 14 rosaries or whatever to get the door to open. That allows the priest a level of flexibility, but you'll notice that kind of restricts his ability to cast spells. Early on, you're a rank 5, or if you're a rank 1 priest, you can literally do this one time a day. That's it. Every other time you have to go through the full ritual. Why? Because you're just a basic, lay person who just started out. I mean, if you're the Pope, you can do it like 15, 20 times a day. So there we have, and this is designed to reflect the ritualistic nature of the priesthood. Your God is not there at your beck and call to jump every single time you want to, just because you call. You're not getting 20 spells a day, not unless you're, like I said, basically the Pope, or a extremely devout monk who's been there for a long time, is maxed out. But you have functionally infinite spell casting so long as you have the time to go through the full rituals to make it happen. And then I've got the divine sacrifice. A priest of rank 6 or higher can make the ultimate sacrifice for their faith. They make a difficulty 45 ritual check to suffer a mortal wound in place of another character. If successful, a PC or NPC who was mortally wounded instead trades hit point totals with the priest. And the result is the target has their HP set at the current total of the priest, and the priest dies in their place. The ability must be declared immediately upon the mortal wounding of the character, and the target character must be willing to receive the sacrifice of the priest. The target does not have to be a member of the priest's faith. However, they cannot be acting in a manner that is contrary to the principles and goals of the priest's chosen faith. So there you have a very distinct serving others, ritualistic, religious, magical ability built into the priest that is not just, I have a spell. The goal here, and I do leave this to the chat, and I do leave this to you guys to tell me, and I do hope you tell me, because remember, I'm trying to build a game here. I'm trying to put this together so that maybe one of these days you guys play this and enjoy it. So point out the holes, point out the things that don't work, point out why this might be a problem. Give me the good, give me the bad. The idea here is that this entire priest spellcasting class, all of these have to do with things that revolve around their faith. It's, hey, I pray for an hour in the morning. I do my, I say my morning rosary. I do all the stuff I'm supposed to. And then St. Michael's going to let me use this ritual casting. He's going to step down and at least a few times a day, he's going to help me out. Otherwise, I can just do it the old fashioned way. And then, of course, I have this ability where I can make a pretty high. 45 is not a low DR, by the way. But that's what a priest should do. You know, we have Paladin in Hell from the, is that the Player's Handbook? D&D Player's Handbook, the basic Player's Handbook, or is the 80, I think it might be the AD&D Player's Handbook, the Paladin in Hell fighting all the demons. He's not there fighting demons by himself because he ran in there to fight demons by himself. He's in there fighting demons by himself probably because he's the rear guard that's making sure the rest of his friends get away. And there's a way to magically take that on yourself. So that's basically what I've got in here for some divine casting. Let's talk arcane. Let's look at this sorcerer. Keep in mind, my idea here is to kind of go into the Conan Pulp-esque, like Thulsa Doom style caster, the Tothamon. I want you to think about somebody who's in some ancient ruin or up in some high, crazy tower that floats on an island in the sky or is in the bottom of some pyramid somewhere, scheming and plotting and launching his plan 20 years later. That kind of almost villainous. And you'll notice that I do have a villainous tint to it because, I mean, yeah, there's good sorcerers. You can be a good guy and cast magic. Arguably, you could say Merlin can fit that. But as a general rule, I think most arcane spellcasters, most of your wizards and sorcerer types I think they have a predilection towards being more evil. A lot of their entire thing is a quest for personal power, right? And personal power to me doesn't sound a whole lot like something that a good character does. So what do we have here in terms of our sorcerer? Student of the lost knowledge, forbidden lore of the ancients, walks the terrible paths between majesty and madness, where the power of the forgotten peoples lie. Through study of old texts and dark rituals, taps into the primordial power of the cosmos and tugs at the threads of the firmament from which the Great One wove the tapestry of the universe. For this theft of power, the price will one day be the sorcerer's life, and likely interest will be due in the form of his immortal soul. But for now, reality bends itself to his will. So he is trading the future, trading eternity for the lifetime. And you'll notice that I mentioned the Great One there because my world, the Dreamless Dark, is monotheistic. Now, that doesn't mean that the cultures in that world recognize that it's monotheistic, but it is. What do we got here? Arcane Talisman. Sorcerer must create an object to be a vessel for their power. They make a craft check. And in whatever craft, now this is one thing I think, and I personally think this is cool. You may think it's stupid. You may think that it's meaningless flavor. You may tell me that it's somehow game breaking and makes a problem. I think this allows you to have more flexibility in how you play the character. And what that is that a sorcerer makes a craft check in the craft they choose as a focus skill. So if you look up here at the roll or at the calling has a focus skill, craft any one. Yes, we're accent policing here. Yes, firmament. Need to canonize that in some sense. I need to make it the firmament. Yeah, I'm going to make it the firmament because you're afraid of what's going to happen when you get sucked up into it for stealing power from it. Yes. But you'll notice that he gets a focus skill in one craft. That can be blacksmithing. It can be painting. It can be, I don't know, jewelry making, pottery making, whatever you want to make it. But you'll notice here, I got back here. Sorry, I got nonsense popping up I gotta get rid of. All right, so he, in whatever his focus craft is, we'll just say it's blacksmithing for fun. He has to use blacksmithing to create an item. The difficulty rating for this creation is determined by the power of the rituals that it can store with the retain ritual ability. Yeah, there you go. Not space itself, but something to do with the magical weave web source. Yes. Firmament in this case is in like the Jewish sense. So if you look into Jewish mysticism, they more or less think of space and the sky as they call it basically the stuff of the universe, like the tapestry that we're all woven into. Fun fact, I actually had some sci-fi stories I wrote that use the same kind of terminology for what was called the firmament drive, which is literally like the spaceship has a system that allows it to hook itself to the cosmic radio wave background and carry itself to another place in the universe that way, and that's how it travels faster than light. It's called a firmament drive. But anyway, back to this. So the difficulty rating is based on how powerful how much power you want to be able to store in it, as well as any special characteristics from a list below. Sorcerer can only have one arcane talisman at any time, and if it's lost, it cannot be replaced without a lengthy ritual taking an entire week with a ritual difficulty rating equal to the difficulty rating used to craft the lost talisman. On a failure, the talisman is just, or if the talisman gets destroyed, the sorcerer suffers a substantial shock to their mind, dealing 1d6 damage directly to their hit points, which is a lot in this game, and permanently reducing their intellect by 1d3. At any time, a sorcerer can replace their talisman with one of greater power by performing a new creation ritual, which includes the sacrifice of their existing talisman. So, I'm a blacksmith. I make a dagger that is my talisman. I roll a 35 on my difficulty rating to craft it. This is a 35 difficulty rating talisman. It can hold a certain amount of power. It has a certain amount of special abilities, that sort of thing. If I lose it or if it gets stolen, the only way I can replace it is by going through this week-long ritual. I have to use the ritual skill and roll a difficulty rating. In this case, it would be a 35 or better in order to break myself and break my soul away from that talisman. And if I fail, or if, say, you throw it in Mount Doom, it destroys the talisman, it damages me directly physically, and it damages my mind. And that's basically the penalty for it. So now you have an in-game thing that becomes super important to that character. So what do we use this talisman for? How does this play into our magic system? Source of their sorcerer's magical power is found in their ability to control mystical forces by performing rituals. Unlike the typical caster, when a sorcerer performs a ritual, they capture energy into their arcane talisman to be released later. At any time, you can take 24 hours to perform a ritual to store magical power in your talisman. You make a ritual check. Upon the completion, a number of magic points equal to the ritual check is stored in the talisman. Anytime a new ritual is performed, a new total replaces the old one from previous attempts. So basically, you take the time, you take 24 hours to perform the ritual, you roll it. We'll use the same before. I got my dagger. It's a 35 talisman. Up to 35 points can be stored in this talisman. But if I only roll a 20, it only gets 20 points. If I go try it again and I roll 25, I don't get 20 plus 25. I just get the 25. So this makes these points, the idea, and you, once again, tell me if I'm wrong on this, tell me if it doesn't come across that way. The idea is to make this cost something, right? It's to make this precious. I've got a 35 difficulty rating talisman that's fully loaded with power. This thing is absolutely it's absolutely critical to you. You're not going to let it get away. You've invested this much power in it. Which then turns into the recall ritual. When performing ritual magic, a sorcerer can duplicate the effect of any spell they have successfully cast previously by expending magic points from their arcane talisman equal to the level of the ritual spell being cast. The sorcerer can only cast a spell of level equal to or lower than their sorcerer calling rank in this manner. So, level 4 sorcerer can cast first, second, third, or fourth level spells. It costs 1, 2, 3, or 4 points of power out of their talisman to cast that spell. They can do it whenever the hell they want to. They don't have to roll any checks for it. They just hold up their talisman and say, cast the spell. It's a 4th level spell. I'm going to spend 4 points and I'm going to cast it. But you'll notice it has to be a spell they've cast before. So in order for them to say, I want to cast Fireball, it's 3rd level, and it's in my, I'm going to use 3 points from my dagger. You can only do that if you have cast Fireball from the scroll or from the ritual in the past, so you understand the spell. So casting it the long way has to be done before you can add that essentially to your spell book. Let's see. Let's take a look. Old Mikey D's got some stuff to say. So let's see what he's got to say about this before we move forward into the greater talisman version. Letters used. Letters for the word used as heaven in Genesis build the idea of fire, water, which is smart. Then you guys like saying biblical Hebrew works on roots and build ideas. Like, yes, they do. There's a lot of really cool stuff in the original Hebrew and whatnot. Anything short of that flies. Short of the flies will have the same 3 core letters, and individual letter means build roots idea. Yeah. Pretty cool stuff there. It's actually they're pretty smart, them old Jews. If you look back to the roots of Hebrew Judaism, it's easily the oldest monotheistic religion, and its roots are pretty. It's actually kind of cool the way it comes about if you look at it kind of as a story. It's and this is touched on. This is a little bit of a side here, guys. I'm sorry for the little off-topic jaunt, but if you read Merlin in the Warlord Chronicles is talking about Jesus he's talking about God and the Hebrew God, and talks about how he was once a regional fire god who basically grew stronger than all the other gods. Because in that book series, one of Merlin's big things is he's trying to bring the ancient gods of Britain back into the world so that they can be powerful and reign supreme for Britons. But he mentions that essentially this idea that God was some regional fire god in the desert who just grew to be more powerful than all the rest. And that's not terribly far from the way some of the stuff is framed in the Old Testament. It's basically you're the chosen people of Yahweh, and you go out and you not just conquer other peoples, but conquer other gods. And until there's just the one left. So it's kind of that way. What you got here? Yeah, shitty description, but I'm limited both intellectually and character count. It's not a terrible description. It gets the job done, man. It gets the job done. So anyway, ritualistic and mystical Judaic philosophy aside, let's go back over here to this ritual casting. So we've got a thing here where the entire idea is tons of sacrifice allows you to then build up an item with power so that you can have access to that power whenever you want to. This, to me, and this is the idea behind it, this plays into the archetypical sorcerer, especially in like a pulp world, in like a Hyboria or something. They're aloof. They are constantly over there doing their little studies, doing their little rituals, practicing their little things, and telling you to get the hell out of the way because they have important stuff to do and go away and quit bothering them. And then when the time comes for them to be out on an adventure or whatever, they have all these crazy powers. So the idea is like, why do they need you to leave them alone? Why do they need you to go away and piss off while they're trying to work? Because they're going through those lengthy rituals where it takes them like 4 hours to cast Fireball. Well, I can't take 4 hours in the middle of combat to cast Fireball. But if I've done the 4 hours before, and now I have the 4 points stored in my talisman, my magic dagger can allow me to hold it up and summon that power to cast that Fireball every round if I want to, until I run out of power in it. And I'm investing of my soul. I'm investing of my personal essence into this dagger in order to cast the power. In order to do it, I'm using my soul to steal from the weave of the universe to power this item up to allow me to bend reality to my will when I want to. But everything has a cost. Everything takes time. And I'm turning the spells into a limited resource that's not a dollar for dollar limited resource. It's not I have 3 third level spells. It's do I want to spend this personal power knowing full well I'm going to have to go over here and make a check. And when I'm a powerful caster who's casting very low level stuff, and I know I'm going to be able to recharge my talisman pretty easily, it's not that big a deal. However, when I want to do something truly powerful, I know it has a monumental cost. And unless I'm monumentally powerful, I may never be able to build that power back into my talisman. Right? So making that caster have to think about that cost every time they do something. Going back to the kind of pulp root, the idea being, how many times do you see this in some pulp story where the fighter or the thief or something wants the wizard to come up? Can't you just wave your hand and make this go away? And the wizard is like, you have no idea what the cost is. Yes, I sacrificed my soul to the 14 demons of the 3rd level of the abyss just so I can open doors for you. How many times do you see stuff like that in those kind of stories? And you get to have that infused into your player, not just the character, when they're having to look down and be like, man, screw you. I'm not spending my damn ritual points on that crap. Use your pick lock skill. I'm not a key. So building up, we get the greater talisman ability. So when they get to rank 7, which actually, if I go back, I think 10 ranks is the highest you can get in a calling. Yeah, there you go. Steve Kennedy in the house. Stephen Kennedy in the house. Talking about Excalibur. That's right. How long has Merlin slept so that Uther Pendragon could sleep with his rival's wife? Rank 7, they can craft a permanent vessel for storing significant power well beyond that of an arcane talisman. It can take any form. However, the process for creating it is very dangerous and demanding. First, they select a number of intellect points, so their actual mental power there, to invest into the talisman. We'll just say 10. The craft check is then 40 plus the points invested. So it's got a 50 difficulty rating if you're putting in 10 points. Points invested made by the sorcerer on a success, they lose the points invested. So your intellect just fell by 10. Keep in mind that 20 is the absolute maximum you can have. This loss is temporary, and the points are regained at a rate of 1 point per month. No effect, magical or otherwise, can restore this loss or increase the rate at which the points come back. So you put in 10 points, you're basically going to take you a year to get to recover from this. You're Tiger King there, you're never going to recover from this. Should a sorcerer choose to invest all of their intellect into the talisman, they remain they're comatose and completely helpless for the entire recovery period. So you got a super brilliant 20 intellect sorcerer who puts all 20 points in. He's got to make an 80 check, which is not possible. But he has to make this huge check, and then he is comatose. No, it wouldn't be 80. He has to make a 60-point check, which is close to impossible. And he's comatose for 20 months to regain his intellect. It can't be, on a failure, the intellect loss is entirely permanent and can only be restored through direct divine intervention. So this is a very risky play for your character. Should they fail on an attempt when investing all of their intellect, their sentience is permanently erased, resulting in the death of their mind, their body, and their soul. So why would we want to take this massive risk to create this greater talisman? Numerous benefits. As long as it exists, they can store their energies in the greater talisman as if they would an arcane talisman. However, there's no limit to how many magic points that can be stored in it. And now the various rituals are cumulative. So I roll a 20 and then I do another ritual and I do 25. Now I have 45 points stored in my greater talisman. So long as it's under the control of the sorcerer, he can cast spells on it. And this can be used via their arcane talisman, even if the greater talisman is not in their possession. So as long as the greater talisman is in a precise location known to the sorcerer and not currently in the control of another character, they can access it from anywhere in the world via their talisman. So you can make like a giant obelisk or a Statue of Liberty or a pyramid or a glass bead that's super tiny that just so happens to be nestled away in a rocky crevice somewhere on a forgotten mountain slope that's your greater talisman. Or I don't know, maybe like a small golden ring that nobody would think any second thought of, and you can invest all this power in it. And as long as you know exactly where it is, you can access all the power that's in it, as long as it's in your control and not in somebody else's. And that gives you a lot of power there, because now you essentially can have infinite, well, not infinite, but you can essentially just imagine a D&D sorcerer who can just keep sleeping and his spells are cumulative, and he wakes up one day and he has 50 ninth level spells ready to go. Should a greater talisman be destroyed, the sorcerer is treated as if they failed their initial check to craft that talisman. So if I put 15 points of intellect into that talisman and you destroy it, my 15 points go away permanently. I take that damage instantly. We go right back to that very obvious example. I'm a great Dark Lord Meyer spirit who has a giant tower called Barad-dûr down in Mordor, and I've invested my entire intellect and power into this greater talisman called the One Ring. And when somebody chucks the sumbitch into the fires of Mount Doom, I'm in a world of crap because I just lost everything. That's the idea. That's the thought. Same thing happens when you look at these pulp novellas where you got this evil sorcerer who thinks he's got everything figured out, and then Conan smashes his mirror or smashes his magic orb or destroys his little figurine or something, and he's screaming no at the top of his lungs and withering away into nothing because he's invested so much power into it. Greater talismans are sources of significant power and can only be destroyed by methods that are determined to be appropriate by the GM for the power invested in the creation. For instance, a greater talisman housing a significant portion of a sorcerer's intellect may only be able to be destroyed by making a craft check of the appropriate craft with a difficulty rating the same used to create the greater talisman in the first place. On the same date at precisely the same time as its original creation, thus creating it in reverse. Likewise, a power greater talisman may only be able to be destroyed if it is consumed by a creature that possesses the power of the ancients, such as a dragon or a stone spirit. Greater talisman infused with less than half the sorcerer's intellect may have a less demanding method of disposal, such as being cast into the deeps of the endless sea or burned in a fire hot enough to melt steel under the noon sun of the hottest desert. Regardless of the power invested or the method of creation, a sorcerer can only have one greater talisman. Please ignore any typos if you're reading that thing on the screen. So, once again, going back to some of the pulp and early fantasy inspirations between how this magic would work, these greater talismans are not something that's easy to destroy, but if you destroy them, they do significant damage. Even the weakest ones have crazy things like throwing them into the depths of the endless sea or having them burn out with dragon fire. Meanwhile, the super powerful greater talismans have to have really, really specific ways. And while it's all up to the game master so that it fits the world and fits what's going on, and you can't have some player do some crazy bullshit where it's like you have to launch it to the third moon of the fifth planet of the world where we don't have space travel, and that kind of crazy garbage. You have to fling it into the sun. Never mind that there's literally no way for you to fling anything into the sun from our Dark Ages world that's, an entire astronomical unit away from the sun. So GM has some control over that, but it allows a lot of narrative play. It allows a lot of customization. And to me, and this is my thoughts again, this is my opinion, and this is what I hope is true with this kind of system, is it allows the player to become more invested in their character. A lot of times I see a big issue when you talk about the death of a narrative campaign, the whole, campaigns only last 6 sessions thing. A lot of it is not just that these players have these grandiose ideas that don't play out, so they walk away. And a lot of it is not just they get bored with the idea. And a lot of it is not just that they're entitled twats that get sick of the game, get pissed off for some reason, and the whole game falls apart. A lot of it is that they come up with this cool idea for a character, but then they're not really invested in it. And then, 5 sessions later, it's like, this character's boring. These mechanics are designed to give you, it's a marriage of backstory and mechanic. I am giving you a way to take those personal flavor items from your character design and directly influence the mechanics of the game with them. Your wizard grew up as a silversmith That was his background. That's part of his backstory. Well, now he uses his silversmith abilities to create his talisman. And he takes that first silver ring that he ever made for his now deceased, silversmith master. And that's what he uses to forge his greater talisman. And you have a more ideally, you have a more invested player who has a true bond with that character and wants to play out the rest of their story. He wants to see how they exist in that game master's world. He doesn't have to be the main character because there's enough personal investment in him and in his actual game mechanic abilities that the thing the player made, that piece of their backstory, so to speak, is now invested in the mechanics of their spell casting. So they get to interact with their backstory every single time they cast Fireball. That's the idea. I may be wrong. Maybe that just makes things complicated. Maybe we have idiot GMs who let players exploit the absolute shit out of that by making, well, I'm a glassmith, so my greater talisman is going to be a bead of glass the size of a grain of sand, and I'm going to put it in the bottom of the fighter's shoe, so he's annoyed by my greater talisman, and nobody knows what it is, and he can never shake it out of his sock. Though, to be honest, now that I think about it, that's something I'd do, and I think that'd be funny as shit. Fighter walking around being pissed off that he can't get the infinite spell casting power of the wizard out of his shoe. Reminds me of Sanderson's Metal Mines. You can trade sap health over time and save it to be used as needed in a huge burst or slowly heal, etc. Not the same, but similar. Yeah, it's kind of a similar idea. It's all about thinking in the future. It's all about planning ahead of time. It's all about being invested in your character. Because I think if players are invested in their characters, they're going to be more invested in the campaign. And too often we have players who are invested in their character by being invested in this nebulous bullshit that they come up with in their backstory, instead of tying that into the actual game mechanics. Before we talk about Rebirth, which I think is actually kind of a cool idea. Little aside here, where some of this philosophy came from is a piece of advice that was not in the 3.5, but was in the 3rd edition Player's Handbook. And actually, it might be in the 3.5 handbook too, but it was in the 3rd edition handbooks where I first saw it. It was talking about skills and filling out your character sheet and putting your skills on your character sheet. And that's kind of how you know this is old school D&D, because when it was talking about your character sheet, it was acting as if instead of you having like this nice pre-printed character sheet that you're going to fill out, it assumes that when you start playing, you're scribbling this shit down on notebook paper and that you need to write the skills that you have down. But it would say that, you write down your skills, but, write them down the way your character would think about them to buy into the game, right? So it's like, your monk may not have move silent. They may have rice paper walk. Because, as a Oriental monk, they're walking across rice paper. That's how they learn to move quietly. So I thought about that and I'm like, that's actually a really good thing. If you start thinking of the skills and the mechanics from the mindset of your character instead of the mindset of yourself, now you're really buying into that character. Now you're building yourself into it. So why not make a magic mechanic where your wizard or your sorcerer in this case is literally using game mechanics to put personalized backstory items in the game and make them part of how the character functions. And when it comes to the, it's also a little sneaky, because how many times you had this bullshit happen, especially some of these modern players? Oh, this pair of sunglasses is super important to my character. It came from his deceased dad, and it's the most important thing in his life. And if the sunglasses disappear, he's like, oh, well, my sunglasses are disappeared. I want to find them again, but maybe I'll look for them. But, I'm certainly not going to sacrifice any, experience point gaining opportunities or that cool quest we're on, or I'm not really going to sacrifice anything to find these sunglasses that are the most important thing in the universe to me. How many times that kind of bullshit's happened? However, if by the mechanics you've tricked your player into taking daddy's old sunglasses and investing them with supreme magical power, and losing daddy's sunglasses now means that they can't cast spells anymore, they're going to bust their ass to find that thing. It's going to be the most important thing to them because their character sheet just became a list of stats and skills with no other abilities until they find the stupid things. Be like Bret Hart and never show up without them wraparounds. Man, I wish I still had my third edition book. I'm sure I do somewhere. I'll bet you it's in my dad's garage in a box filled with old Star Trek action figures and micro machines. So Sorcerer gets rebirth at rank 10. The ability to transcend the bonds of life itself. A sorcerer of rank 10 who has crafted a greater talisman can tie their life force directly to it. This effect is permanent and cannot be reversed. Once a sorcerer chooses to tie their life force to their greater talisman, they can no longer be permanently killed as long as their greater talisman exists. Should a sorcerer die through any cause, natural or other, their body is reduced to dust and their spirit is stored in the greater talisman. After 1d30 months, the sorcerer is restored to life at the location of their choosing. The location must be a fixed location they are familiar with, chosen at the time of their death. Alternatively, the sorcerer can have a body prepared to receive them. To accomplish this, the sorcerer must pass 3 checks: a craft check, an arcane lore check, and a ritual check, all difficulty rating 50, to create a simulacrum identical to their body at the time of creation. The sorcerer may have only one simulacrum at a time. Upon death, the sorcerer is immediately restored to life within the simulacrum, becoming the new body. Should the sorcerer's greater talisman be destroyed, any existing simulacrum is reduced to dust instantly, loses all magical properties, and a sorcerer suffers no ill effect if that simulacrum is destroyed. So, once again, we go back to some of those things. Most notably, Lord of the Rings, plenty of pulp novels, plenty of other fantasy novels, plenty of great old myths. This super powerful sorcerer invests all of his power into his greater talisman, and if you destroy it, he is screwed. However, if you destroy him, but not it, kind of like a lich's phylactery, he's going to be back. Built right there into the rules. Cool stuff you can do with it. What we got here? Must not be Oakley's with the prism lenses, eh? Sacrifice a level or 2 to find those fuckers. Yeah, no kidding. It's like my Ray-Bans. You can see here where I started to do the Zealot. I haven't finished the Zealot yet, but let's look at the description and figure out how some ways I might play with this, how I might do it. Possessed by powers of the world beyond, zealots have given themselves over entirely to ancient entities and primordial powers from the vastness beyond the world, where the priest is powered by their faith and the sorcerer by knowledge of the arcane. A zealot powers their magic through the sacrifice of their very life force. Rather than promise their soul as payment for their power, a zealot pays up front, giving their mind and body over to greater powers for the promise of rewards in the next life. Zealots are the harbingers of the plans of mysterious cults and agents of mysterious forces pursuing the ends of their patrons in all things. Like I said, I haven't done this one yet. I haven't worked on him that much. I think the idea of the zealot is the guy who goes crazy, the more crazy, the more powerful he gets. So I'm thinking about investing mental powers, like for instance, his intellect or his mental resolve or his resolve or something, investing that into becoming more and more powerful. having a limit based on what their level of zealot is, that stops them from investing all of it right up at once, but basically giving them the ability to do all kinds of crazy stuff pretty much at will, but sacrificing their functionality everywhere else in the process. So now you have a player character who has to make himself go crazy in order to get more powerful. I don't know. What do you guys think on that one? I think that's a fun idea there. Obviously, I struggled with it a little bit because I haven't put it together yet. Pathfinder 1E fan. I absolutely cannot stand. We have Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 at home. I am a 3.5 guy. I think what Pathfinder did, Pathfinder is bad 3.5 homebrew. It's like buying an iPhone when you're used to an Android, or buying a Mac when you've had either a Linux box or a Windows PC. You see, if all you've ever had is Pathfinder, if all you've ever had is Apple, man, you think this is great stuff, man. Look how innovative this is. If you've had a Windows machine or you've had a Linux box and you get a Mac PC, you get a Mac PC, or if you've had an Android smartphone or a Windows smartphone or something, you get an iPhone, you look back and you say, man, this thing has training wheels on it that I'm not allowed to take off. Pathfinder 1E is basically, we did all the worst things we could possibly do with 3.5 and codified them as rules. The modularity is completely destroyed. And the modularity is what makes 3.5 worth it. So, yes. Doom Source Buddy was on a show last night and his 3.5. I might have to check that out. You'll have to send me a link because I would like to hear some of his 3.5 and third edition philosophy. But no, I absolutely detest Paizo, and I detest their game even more. I love that. There's the backhanded compliment. They all sound like good ideas so far, unique regardless. In other words, like, well, nobody's tried that before. You can certainly say it's novel. It's like the nice way to say you're nuts. Matt Thompson, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, man. I've been talking about that magic system in the Dreamless Dark. You wanted to know more about that world and how it works. So that's what this whole episode's been, except for when I was saying mean things about Corpse King in the very beginning. I do have to disagree with you. Well, no, I agree with you that it's with clunkiness for sure. It's definitely with clunkiness. Basically, Pathfinder 1E is they took 3.5, they picked the pieces that they wanted, they locked them in place, they added their homebrew, and then they just eliminated all the modularity. So it's really awesome if you want to play exactly what Paizo wanted you to play and not what you actually want to play yourself. Yep, there you go. Same with me. Love 3.5, ran it for a decade. I ran it from the day it came out till the day I moved to a place where I didn't have players anymore and was on hiatus for a little while. I'm playing it now. I'm running I have a 3.5 group that meets every other Sunday, and we're playing Oriental Adventures right now. And then my 3.5 group on Discord every other Wednesday has converted into a Cyberpunk Red group in the past couple of months. So we're currently doing that. But they were a 3.5 group before I TPK'd them. And, well, I mean, I didn't TPK them. Their stupid decisions TPK'd them. They TPK'd themselves. Except for the one guy who was smart enough to run away, but he rolled some really shitty checks and he fell down a mine shaft. I mean, what you going to do? He at least had the right idea. He just did it wrong. But yeah, I have no use for Pathfinder. And then Pathfinder 2E is the same thing, but it's 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So it's like you took a worse game and you made it worse, and I'm supposed to buy that. Yeah. Oh, Yes. Oriental Adventures in 3.5 is a lot of fun. I am running them through Rokugan, which has its own challenges because Rokugan is such a unique setting, and the spell casting is so limited, which is real fun when you're dealing with 3.5 players. But relatively decent sized party there right now, dealing with a situation that actually just let the Emperor out of a crate. Um, Long story short, the Emperor was in a magical coma and was put in a suitcase and was given to the party, and they were like, "Hey, take this and go hide it, and come back when we tell you to." And now they're in kind of the middle of a weird secession war. But it's interesting. It is certainly interesting. They have decided that they are the Pinchy Pokey Alliance because it's Manus and Crab and Scorpion and Unicorn. So everything either pinches or pokes. When you say playing OA, are you just using the options? But I'm your own world, or actually running through? No, I'm actually running the Oriental Adventures games. Actually, run through. We're in Rokugan now. I have. Nope, it's downstairs. Somewhere around here, I have a notebook where I've plotted out major adventures for the entire year. It's not one-to-one time, but it is tied to a calendar. So as they're playing the sessions, and they ended up in a situation where they suddenly had to cross the entire country in one day. So that involved them trading favors with some powerful Shugenja who would basically put them on a storm cloud and fly them across the sky because otherwise they weren't going to make it. But I know when certain major events are scheduled to happen, and then I, of course, adjust them if things come up. But it is based on Legend 5 Rings Rokugan. Yep, Karator. I've thought about doing Karator just because I like Karator. And it's more D&D centric, which makes it a lot easier. 6 months indentured to the Golden Horde. A misunderstanding. That sounds like something my party would have happen to them. There's a lot of misunderstandings. A lot of misunderstandings there. I will say this: my Cyberpunk Red game, which is running 1-to-1 time, actually. I'm testing a theory because I think actually Cyberpunk works better because the kind of disjointed mission-based system with the gig or with the hustle mechanic that's in it, I think it might actually work pretty well in 1-to-1 time. So I'm actually guinea pigging my players on that. However, it seems that they have managed to get like every player has 2 to 3 characters, and somehow every last one of them has managed to end up with a party, one of their characters that's like completely beholden to Sov Oil, and they're currently. We played last night, and they are currently on a ghost ship oil platform. They're 1,200 miles out to sea in the Pacific Ocean on an oil platform that was converted into like a giant like R&R party barge. So like a casino and nightclub and stuff on it, and the whole derrick tower has been converted into like a hotel tower. But it's like a ghost ship. So they're on this empty Sov oil platform that they're about to have to ride back home. And yeah, it's rather interesting. It's like, how did y'all all end up being like beholden to Sov Oil? And now we've shipped you out here, and you're about to spend like an entire month at sea riding a oil platform back to the back to shore at 5 knots. I mean, provided that the invisible cyber psycho that's on there doesn't kill them. So yeah, they found out at the end of the session that exactly why it's a ghost ship. Meanwhile, their other characters are going further and further into the future as the calendar outpaces that adventure. But fun game. I think the ghost ship oil rig, I might even turn that into like a free PDF for people who play Cyberpunk, put it on drive through or something. So, because it is kind of a cool adventure. And we have had one player versus player instance. Our media gunned down our rocker boy in a bar, which was pretty funny. Mainly because the rocker boy was being an idiot. And so he just RoboCopped him, blew his hand off and blew his leg off, and then shot him the rest of the way to death. Um, this is what happens when the dice roll good critical hits at the right time. So, but yeah, that one's pretty interesting. But I mean, I'm actually running out of stuff. I mean, I got plenty of stuff to talk about, but we're now on the point of rambling about sessions from last night and that sort of thing, talking about different games that are being run and played. And we have kind of discussed the magic system of my game already and done my review of Corpse King. So the business of the day, so to speak, is finished. And we got this last 10 minutes here. So, and hell, why not? That's what I'm doing with Cyberpunk. Maybe I'll turn that into a PDF because I like this oil platform ghost ship adventure. Just because they get out there and like their nomad notices when they're like halfway to the oil platform that they got just enough fuel to get to the oil platform. So Sob Oil has made sure that they're going to be bringing the oil platform back one way or another. Either that or they're going to be paddling back in a lifeboat. But that's an interesting one. Player versus player incident was funny as hell. Like this is a good one here for folks. And letting the dice tell the story. All right. Because there's times when fudging dice is called for, in my opinion. And I am going to say that. There is a time when fudging dice is called for. Generally, it's when the chaotic nature of the dice has turned itself into something that A, doesn't really make sense, and B, is just vastly unsatisfying for everybody. Like when your high-level fighter is getting murked out by a random town guard just because he happened to critically fail everything while the town guard rolled back-to-back critical hits and then back-to-back maximum damage. Is it true to life? Is it simulationist? Sure. It absolutely is. And if you're doing a roll in the open, absolutely no fudging. We guarantee it. We let the dice fall with it. Well, where they may game. Sure. Okay, that's what you should be doing. You got to be honest with your players in that way. However, that's really, really unsatisfying for a throwaway, nonsense, stupid encounter to just by goofball dice rolls turn into crap. So I'm not an anti-fudging person. However, a lot of times I think fudging is something that happens like a couple of times a campaign at the most. And when I say a campaign, I run campaigns that last. I mean, my campaigns last anywhere from a year to 4 or 5 years. Like I don't typically have campaigns that last less than a year. So we're talking like once every 6 months, I might minorly fudge a damage roll or something. So we ain't talking about saving characters' asses, because just as important as making the game satisfying for everybody is allowing the dice to help tell the story. So you take a look at what happened in my Cyberpunk game. I had a whole bunch of different stuff laid out for the players, so we are sandboxed in this. And the path they picked led to a module that I'd pulled. Now, we're playing Cyberpunk Red. I pulled an Atlas Games module from like 1998 called Cabin Fever, which is a fantastic locked room scenario module. And I had it pulled aside as one of the possible things that they could end up doing, right? And that just so happens to be where they landed. Well, in Cabin Fever, spoilers for the 20-plus-year-old module, folks, for 20-plus-year-old module for Cyberpunk 2020, I'm sure I'm really ruining this for everybody. In that module, what happens is they get this job to go board this boat out in the harbor, but they're really kind of fall guys. They're kind of set up because as they're going out to it, it blows up and it blows burning basically acid gas all over the place. And really the only way they can escape is to go hide back in the bar where the guy who hired them is hanging out. And they're stuck in this bar because if they go outside or if they, a window gets broken or something, this gas is like going to eat them alive. It'll kill them. Like there's basically no way they're surviving getting the gas on them. So they end up trapped inside. And of course, Petrochem pays a bunch of money to cut off all the communications, and they're buying off all the news people. So you got the TV news going, telling the corporate version of the story. Meanwhile, you can't call out, you can't get out on the net and any of that crap. And you're stuck in this place. There's a cyber psycho in there. There's the Petrochem fall guy who's desperately trying to get a hold of his bosses to figure out what happened. There's the fixer that you think set you up that you're probably pissed at. The town drunk. There's a few people in there to kind of make the situation worse. Well, as you get later, there's like different things they have in there where it's like you can do these kind of things to raise the tension, to get under people's skin. And one of them is like, oh, people are going to bang on the door, right? And they're not going to talk. They're just going to kind of moan because they're all burned up by this acid. And then like they'll slam themselves up against the window and kind of look like a zombie monster out of Resident Evil or something before going off somewhere else. And it's like the gas doesn't actually do anything like that. It's just like a hydrofluoric acid, so it just burns the shit out of them. They're moaning and groaning because their lungs are burnt to hell and their skin's all sloughing off, but they're not actually monsters. But of course, the idea is that it triggers some things in the head of your characters. Well, one of my characters decides that this is zombie gas. And he looks at one of our characters who had been exposed. He had been burned. He had suffered quite a bit of damage from the acid and had miraculously been basically washed off with basically he gets into the bar and they're like spraying him with Dr. Pepper to wash this stuff off of his skin out of the soda guns. And so you got this guy who's covered in soda. He's all sticky and stuff, and he's been exposed. And now his own party members are looking over at him and they're like, this guy's going to turn into a damn zombie. So the media looks over. He's like, we're going to tie him up. Now, is he going to let himself be tied up? No, he's going to be a jackass player character. And he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm pulling out both my pistols. I'm back to the wall and I'm pointing a pistol at each window. And I'm like, I'm going to shoot the windows and kill everybody. And our solo's like, all right, I'm going to try and like get up and disarm him. And the media is like, I'm going to shoot him in the fucking head. I'm like, he's like, screw that. He's like, I don't care. Are you kidding me? Dude might be turned into a zombie. He's talking about letting zombie gas in here. I'm just going to shoot him. So he rolls a critical hit. And in Cyberpunk Red, when you get a critical hit, you roll an injury on the table. What's the injury? Dismembered hand. So I'm like, you blow his hand off, so one gun's gone. And he's like, he keeps trying to fight back and trying to like shoot the window with his other hand. And he's like, well, I'll do it again. And he's like, he rolls critical hit again. Critical injury, dismembered leg. So he's like, okay, then you blow his leg off. So this dude's been RoboCop. He's had his hand blown off and his leg blown off. And he's like damn Boris the Bullet Dodger from Snatch over there in the corner, like, fuck you, you miss. Because while he's getting critical hits and he's doing these massive critical injuries, he's actually not doing a tremendous amount of damage because he keeps rolling low on the damage die. So I'm like, you're blowing his hands and legs off, but the dude's still alive. And he's getting shot up against the wall. And he eventually kills him, but it was a pretty funny way to have a player versus player incident. And because I play with mature adults, they had a good laugh at it, and nobody's mad that a character got shot up. So there's my PvP story for the week. All right, so I'm going to check out a couple of these last comments, and then we're going to call it a night, folks, because we are here at the end of our 2 hours coming up. Before I hit these comments, remember, like, share, subscribe. Members already have my seven keys to effective game master design. It does go live tomorrow evening. Don't miss it. That series, I think, is going to be awesome. I do believe that the intro is actually of a pretty good amount of value by itself. But if you're a member, you can already check it out. So good way to sign up. If you just want to support the channel, Patreon's great. Super chats are great. Super stickers are great. I take that money and put it towards our car projects because I really do want to give somebody a car. It just takes a lot of money to do that. And then of course, if you want to support me personally, as well as probably a dozen other of your friends from X and Facebook and the TTRPG world. Corded Codex, Volume 1, check it out. Paperback and ebook, great stuff. Well worth the money. So buy a copy, read it, give us a review, and we'll go from there. So let's check out these these comments, and I'll let you guys get back to not listening to me jabber. Of course, Mikey D said good night. He has to go over there and be on one of the 47 streams that he guest hosts all over the place. If I haven't gotten my talking on stream fix pop on, I think people listen to me enough today. And got a trio from Mac. Fudge the dice once in a while if it stops a ridiculously unfortunate event or action. Consider it divine intervention and don't tell them. Yeah, the don't tell them part's important. If players know you fudge dice, it's always a bad problem. It's always bad. If they know that you're going to fudge, a lot of times it's going to cause problems. And this is what happens when you fudge too much. Because all of a sudden, if you don't fudge and save your character, you're an asshole because they know you fudged and you would have saved them. So why didn't you save their character? Or they assume that you made it worse and you killed their character because it wasn't rough enough. So you fudged those dice. Or they start doing really stupid shit and start trying to take advantage of it because they're like, oh, old Daniel's going to fudge the dice and he's going to save me. So I'm going to try something really stupid. One part of my philosophy that I would add to this is do not save characters from themselves. If they do stupid stuff, let the stupid have its consequences. If the regular town guard, for whatever reason, multiple critical hits and is going to kill your fighter for something that the fighter didn't do anything really wrong, it just is the happenstance, yeah, you might fudge the dice. But if the fighter is being an asshole for no reason because he's level 9 and he knows that mathematically there's almost no chance that the guy's going to hit him, and he's like, pulling up his kilt and waving his Johnson at the town guard, and then you roll multiple critical hits on the dick kick check, yeah, I mean, the fighter needs to be crying in the street regardless of what his level is. So you don't save them from their own stupidity. Yep. Ab-lib the situation, less fortunate outcome. Just random super bad luck, worst possible moment, fudge. Yeah, important stuff there. And if they do something, yeah, there you go. If they do something really stupid after you ask, are you sure? Then I do not fudge. And that's because you're nice, Mac. I am probably not going to say, are you sure? That'll be my last piece of advice for the evening, my last little ad here. The are you sure or do you want to do that? Classic Game Master response. Here's what you do, guys. The only time you should use that is when there is a situation where their character should really know better and you can tell it's like the player not thinking things through. And it's like, hey, hold on a second. Do you really think that would happen? Because your player should know better. Like, my player is a, Cyberpunk example. My player has like a pretty good sea vehicle skill. He's not going to do something really stupid with the boat. It's like, yeah, you know that's going to screw the boat up. So yeah, you sure you want to do that because your character knows that if he does this, it's going to blow the engine, right? And if he still does it, of course, he gets the consequences of his action. But that's really the only time I'm ever going to use the "Are you sure?" Are you sure is like, I think the player is just overlooking something the character would know, not that's a really idiotic idea. Are you sure you want to do it? Because if you, as a player, should know better, you don't get an are you sure? If your character should know better, but maybe the player doesn't, maybe I'll give you an are you sure? No, Stephen Kennedy, it is not directly compatible with 2020. There are some pretty decent conversion guides that you can download for free from Artel Sorian. So it's not horribly difficult to do the conversions. I will say this, 2020 is a better game, but 2020 is extremely crunchy, and you gotta know your players on 2020. If they're not going to buy, it's kind of like playing Shadowrun. If they're not going to buy into the system and learn how stuff works, you're going to have combat that lasts 47 hours with all the hit detection and all that hit die and all that stuff, where you're doing location rolls. And you really have to break the Dungeons and Dragons mindset with 2020, because the combat system is set up for you to take a ton of minuses in order to do cool stuff. Seth Borkowski has a good breakdown of this where he's like, yeah, sure, you got like a plus 20 to your hit, and you're always going to hit if you just stand there and shoot. But what you want to do is you want to take a -2 to hit because you're running at full speed. So you've got a +2 to defense. You're harder to hit, but it's harder for you to hit. And you want to shoot with both guns in hand at one time. So you're going to take another -2, and you're going to do it while you're diving across a table. So you got to make this roll, or you take these other minuses. And by the time it's done, instead of a +15, you got a +5. Still a decent chance, but you do this really cool thing where you run across the lobby and you drop back and slide under the table and then jump up and roll over the desk and shoot out of both hands like you're in some kind of, like you're John Wick or something. And if your players don't think that way and they want to do the D&D, I pull my gun out and I shoot the bad guy and then I use my move. If they play that way, 2020 is never going to be good. They have to break that mindset. Red is a lot more accessible. It's a lot more streamlined, but it also requires the game master to use his brain a lot more in order to fill in some blanks. I like them both. I love 2020, but I would much rather have a brand new group play Red. And conversions are a little wonky, but it's not too terribly difficult. So, since that's all I got for the evening, I appreciate you folks coming out. Appreciate everybody stopping in to hear me jabber about my game, jabber about Corpse King's game, jabber about 3.5 and Pathfinder and Cyberpunk and all this other fun stuff we've talked about, dice fudging. And guys, make sure you check out the video tomorrow. Please let me know either in the comments or shoot me a DM or whatever. Let me know how you feel about that series, because it's going to take a pretty decent amount of work for me to put it in and to get it done. And do I really need to just hammer it out? So every week we've got a new 7 Habits video, or is this something I need to sprinkle in? Because, I don't want to sit here and dedicate, and just do nothing but videos that nobody's interested in over and over and over again just to finish the series. I'm going to finish it either way. I think it's an important project, but if it's not something you guys want to watch, it's going to become an every so often thing for me to put it out there. So please do me a favor, check it out. Let me know what you think. That'll be tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central is when it will go live on the channel for non-members. And I thank you guys for coming out and hanging out. Corbin Codex Volume 1, check it out. Like, share, subscribe, hype video, all that fun jazz for YouTube nonsense. Member super chats, memberships, Patreon, all goes to building cars. And I will see you guys next time. Remember, live streams are the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month. You guys have a good one.